I haven't done this in a way too long time. How does this work again? Hey everyone, what's going on? It has been a year-ish. I don't even know anymore. The last weeks, months, year just passed by, and I don't even know. I blinked and it was May already. The year just started. Anyway, I felt like doing a video again. Basically, at the end of April, I've had such a good reading month that I wanted to talk about it. In April, I joined Jake's and Stacy's readathon. It's called the Battle of the Bands. I had a short brain fart moment here. It's called the Battle of the Bands, and it was their third time that they did this one, and this time it was centuries, so 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. And yay, Team 70s won! Woo! It was super fun. I had the best reading month this year. Not that I, read bad books before, but it just felt, again, more social. I was really missing this because since I stopped doing the YouTube videos, I kind of also took a step back from generally on Discords and joining readathons and whatnot. And while I did join, I think one in October last year, I just didn't have enough time to interact with folks and just talk about the books that we've all read and talk strategy on how to go about the other teams. Anyway, so this April, I really embraced this chance and started reading again and started really cool books, and it was just a blast. Like, their readathon is really always my favorite. So let's talk about stats a little bit. In April, I read a total of 12 books. I don't even have enough fingers in my hand to talk about this, so I read 12 books in April with an average of 313 pages. So because it was a readathon, right, I read a lot of shorter books versus longer books. I read a lot of romance. I read actually not that much fantasy, although it was still a couple of fantasy books there. Thrillers, horror, a whole mixed bag of things, which was amazing because that's how I've been reading all this year. Not too focused on fantasy and sci-fi anymore, even though fantasy is still by far my most read genre, but I'm reading more other things again, and that's how I actually have been all my life, that I read across the board. All right, I'm not going in any particular order. I'm just talking a little bit about the books that I read, and then definitely will highlight the ones that I really, really enjoyed. And I think I want to start with one of the ones that I think is going to be a new favorite. It's Oliver K. Langmead, Birds of Paradise is the book that I read, and look at this cover. I mean, I can't even. That's the reason why I bought this book. I've never, ever heard about this book at all. I've never heard anyone talking about the author, even though he wrote 3 other books, I think, if I'm not mistaken. This is fantasy, I guess, in today's world, so it's more urban, if you want to call it that way. It's not typical urban fantasy by any means, and it has a very biblical theme. So we are following Adam, the first man, in today's world, and we get to meet a bunch of characters from the Garden of Eden. It's not Bible characters in that sense, so we're not going to meet, I don't know, Joseph and Maria or whatnot, but the characters that are shapeshifters too. I don't think that's a big spoiler because Birds of Paradise, so there are a lot of birds that are shapeshifting into people, and they have birds' names, so magpie and so on. And yeah, we're following Adam, and he is searching for something. And I don't want to say much about it because I really liked going into this not really knowing what is going on and what his end goal is. But the writing was beautiful. It was a little bit episodic, I think is the right word of describing that, as in we had a really great conversation and then we jumped a little bit forward in time and moved to the next situation, and then we traveled across the planet, like to the other side. Like, it starts in the US, if I remember correctly, and then we end up in Britain. It has been a while. It's 1.5 months that I've read it, so details are escaping me. But the feeling that I had when reading it was just fantastic, and this is definitely one of the books that I want to read again, probably sooner rather than later. She said, thinking about her TBR, that is completely out of control. But it was just such a great reading experience from how the book is written, how the characters have interactions. The characters themselves are fantastic. The plot itself was fantastic. The author pulls in a lot of great themes that are not just biblical of nature or Christian of nature, but just societal, and talks about them in a really interesting way. I have one book that I can recall that I've cried before. At the ending of this, tears. Like, once I realized what, is happening, and because he talks about something very specific throughout the book, and then at the end you realize you kind of have an idea that this might be the case, but at the end it's being revealed. And tears. Like, I really had a moment where we're sitting there, I was like, I'm feeling devastated for him. And it's knowing what he went through, because you're getting really deep with Adam in the book, and you're learning a lot of his past. And it's just incredible. So this book, my friends, if you have never heard of it, if you've never seen it, give it a try. It's fantastic. I think I made my point. Moving on, my romance reading with this month started with Accidentally Amy. I read this as an audiobook. It's from Lynn Painter, an author that I've been reading about 2 other books, Mr. Wrong Number and Love Wager. But that is one I remember I liked, but I have to look up really quickly what it was about, because I don't even remember anymore. Like, that was the first book I read this month. I remember that, but I don't remember anymore what it was about. Yeah, so it's about Amy, who's actually not called Amy, but Izzy? So it starts with her being at Starbucks, and she, is in a hurry to get to work, and her coffee is not coming. So when someone yells Amy in the Starbucks shop, she's like, okay, no one seems to grab it, so I'll just grab it. When she turns around grabbing the coffee, she runs into a guy. The coffee spills over the guy's t-shirt. They have a thing for each other, meet cute situation, blah, 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 blah. And then he's like, oh, I see you tomorrow, Amy. And she's like, yeah, I might have to tell you tomorrow that I'm not Amy, And then she comes into the office. That dude obviously is in the office then as well. It's surprise, surprise, a new hire, her new boss or whatever. And then she has to tell him, well, I'm not Amy and he is not amused. So that's kind of how this started. But the writing was good. It was super quick and fun. It was a shorter book in general. So yeah, I listened to that as in audio. There's not much more to tell. It was fun. The other one I remember a little bit better because I had a lot more fun with that one, and that was The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. I'm terrible with remembering names. Also listened to that as an audiobook. Here it is about a long-time friendship. They both have a thing for each other, but they don't know that because they've never talked about it. It's a sports... Is it a college thing? Might be, because they are younger, and I think she is a dancer. He's a football player or hockey player. I don't know details. Ugh. Who needs details in romance stories? It's just about the love and the smut and whatnot. There was not too much smut in both of them, by the way. Accidentally Amy and this one, smut is not, which I appreciate. I don't like constant smut scenes. That's just, I don't like that in romance. Anyway, squirrel. So tropes in this story is longtime friendship becoming lover, and then what actually is the interesting part is they have to fake date. And I love a good fake date relationship. So they have to pretend to be couples for his career. Oh, it's not college. He's actually a professional sports guy. I remember that now. But they have to fake date for the press because he is a big time, guy. She owns a dance studio and she teaches kids how to dance and whatnot. So they fake date, and he is kind of using this opportunity to really fake date with her, and it's just cute. They have interesting scenes together, a little bit of embarrassment, a little bit of quirkiness, and it's just cute. So this one I highly recommend if you like good romance, and especially if you like the fake dating trope. I think it was very well done in this one. Now I know why I thought college football, because I also listened to The Graham Effect, and that is definitely a campus type of romance story. This is actually part of a longer series. I didn't know that when I started reading the book, but I realized at one point I was like, I feel like I'm missing a little bit. So there's a whole series before that with some of the characters that are part of this story. But at the end of the day, you still get through. I mean, it's, again, not a super complicated romance story, so you still get what it is about and who these characters are and how everything works together. I haven't read the prior series yet. I might, because I actually enjoyed this a lot. So I don't know how much I spoiled myself for certain things because I started with this series. But then again, it's romance, so how much do you actually spoil yourself here? Anyway, this is sports. In particular, hockey. I just had to look it up again. Again, the sport part is not the important part about this book. It's about the characters. And somehow teams had to merge from different hockey teams, and they had to merge in one. They are not happy about it. Yada yada yada. But the main guy that it is about really wants to impress the coach, and he realizes he can do that by working together with his daughter. So they are doing a pact thingy and say, hey, you help me with this and I help you with the other thing. She plays hockey as well, and she wants to kind of get away out of the shadows of her father. And, so they both have something to win by working together, and it's like kind of hesitant. It's a little bit enemies to lovers. Not really, because I don't feel they've really been enemies before. They just had an awkward situation when they first met because of false expectations. I don't know. It's not really enemies to lovers, but it's fun. It's cute. I really liked her writing style. The author, by the way, is Al Kennedy. I really liked her writing style, which is definitely why I want to read the prior series. And I think even this series already continued with the second book. And then the last romance book that I read for the month, again, it was not in that order. I'm just randomly going around. But that's Simply the Best by Susan Elizabeth Phillips, one of my favorite romance authors. I've been reading her forever, especially this series. Funny enough, another sports romance. This is football this time. This is the last book that was just released in May or April or May in the Chicago Stars series. So this is book 10 or 11 in that series. I'm not 100% sure. But the Chicago Stars are a fictional football team in Chicago, and every book is about one of the characters, sometimes about the coach, sometimes about the headhunter, etc., etc. But it all is around the Chicago Stars. And what I love about Susan Elizabeth Phillips is it's more mature woman. So one of the main characters in here, she is in her mid to late 30s, so a bit younger than me. And usually there's also a mother character or an aunt character or someone related, again, more mature, that also has something going on in their life, and usually it's also some sort of love story that then ensues. I just love Susan Elizabeth Phillips. This is not the best entry in the Chicago Stars. It is better than the one that came out before that I really didn't like. There are other entries in the series that I liked a lot better than this one. Still, it was a good time. Still, it's just coming home type of series for me, because I've been reading it for so long, and I've been reading a bunch of others of her books as well. Her romance is just really heartwarming. Her writing is just on another level compared to a lot of other romance books that I'm reading. The way she tells stories is you always feel connected somehow to the characters, even though you have nothing in common with them sometimes. Like, she makes chocolate. I've never tried this, and I probably never will in my life. But just the characters all have a quirkiness to them, and they're all heartwarming. It's all wholesome, and they're just fun. All right, let's get into another category. I also read a horror book. That was the shortest one, which is The Ballad of Black Tom. It's 154 pages, Lovecraftian horror story. And Philip Chase recommended that to me a while ago, a long time ago. But now is the perfect time to read this. It fit perfectly into this readathon. And I only knew that it was Lovecraftian horror. It took quite some time in this book to get to the Lovecraftian element. For the first half of the book, I was sitting there, I was like, what am I reading right now? I thought it's something different. I was slightly confused with that. Having said that, it's an interesting story. You can really develop a world in 154 characters, and then all of a sudden everything happened really, really fast and got really, really dark and really, really deep. And I don't know. It feels like this is maybe just a prequel to something bigger. I definitely would have loved kind of diving more into some of the, especially magical Lovecraftian elements, because I kind of like those generally. Yeah, it was just too short. It didn't suck me in well enough. It was good. It was good writing. It was an interesting story. It was an interesting character. I don't know. Something was just missing for me to make it a really great book. I had fun, but ended up being like kind of meh about it. It's not becoming a favorite or anything. So yeah, not great, not terrible, meh. Let's talk about the classic that I read, although I should have put that into the love category as well, which is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, a book that I've meaning to read for a while. And any Jane Austen, really. That's my first Jane Austen. I've never read anything by her, or the Bronte sisters, for that matter, fall kind of into the same category for me. So I read that, and yeah, I mean... It was a low-stakes love story. It fits to the life that they probably had back then. Boy, did they have problems. Unbelievable. So it's all gossip. It's like your Bridgerton on steroids, kind of. I don't know. Or a bit more old school, if you want it that way. I don't know. I think I had a good time. Maybe I'm too old by now. Maybe I should have read it as a teenager and I would have enjoyed it more. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what I was expecting. I read it. So I read a thriller as well. And I still am not sure. So Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris is the thriller that I read for the readathon. This was a random pick that was closer to the end. And I was just like, okay, I need something else. And I looked at my shelf and was like, let me grab this one. I learned about this book as part of the traveling book box that Jake and Stacy organized. That was more a mystery thriller book box. That was it in there when I was in there? I don't know. It was definitely when Jake and Stacy did their video. He mentioned that this is one of his favorite books. And Jake and I are very aligned when it comes to thrillers, mystery, these types of books in what we like. We usually tend to like the same books, which is funny. I've never had that in my life. So I think it's super interesting. So it's like, if Jake likes this, I will like this too. And in general, that is true. If it wouldn't be for one very specific scene in here that just made me hurt a lot. So I can deal with a lot of blood, with a lot of torture, bring it on. No problem. But the moment you harm an animal, I'm out. And that's what happened in here. I was like, dude, this was so good. The game the guy was playing with the main character here was incredible. It's like so psychotic. It's not even... Like, it was on another level. The whole story is so surreal and just so crazy. I was all there for that. But then, like, in the first third-ish, I realized what the guy is about to do. And then when the reveal happened of that, I was just like, no. So I had to skim over a couple of pages to just pass the scene. The thing that really annoyed me most at the end of it is you could have done it without it. You could have the same impactful story without the puppy. You could have left that puppy out. Do not harm your puppy. I'm telling you, like, this is, I can't. No, it's not happening. Nothing with animals. So that's why I think I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5. Otherwise, it would have been a 5 out of 5, definitely, because everything else was fantastic and exactly what I love. But because you harmed a puppy, I cannot forgive you for that. I don't know if I will read other books by them because of that. Because what if they harm animals in other books too? And that's always the tricky part with me when you think about thriller, mystery, that stuff in general. Because you need a shock value, right? And there are good shock values and then there are cheap shock values. And I find every time, unless it's like Cujo, right? A raging animal, that's a different story. But if it's an innocent puppy or a kitten or anything, right? An innocent cow, I don't know. If it's not the animal's fault, I think it's a cheap way of adding this horror situation into a book. I'm not okay with that. And I think it's a cheap trick of an author to pull that. My opinion, everybody can have their own, that's totally fine. But that's something where I'm not okay with that. So, I'm torn with this one because if you tear those pages out with that situation and you just don't have it, if you don't have it in there, you could still write the same story. You could, there would have to be a very small tweak that you would have to do to make the situation when the reveal happens as impactful. You could still do it though. Like there are other ways on how you could do that. Rant over. Moving on to a much better experience that I had with the book. I started Stephen Blackmore's Eric Carter series. The first book is Dead Things, which I got gifted by Twainy or Nancy a long time ago. So I finally picked this up and I loved it so much that first of all, I switched to audio because it is light enough that I was able to listen to it on audio. And I loved it so much that I listened to the first 4 books of the series in April for the readathon. And they are super fast. I mean, you can see, right? It's not a whole lot of pages, super fast and fantastic. I loved it. And I already listened to book 5 in May, but I will talk about that hopefully in a later video. So, but it's Dead Things is book 1, Broken Souls is book 2, Hungry Ghosts is book 3, and then Fire Season is book 4. Eric Carter, which is the main character in the name of the series, but also the main character here. He is originally from LA, which is also funny because I live close to LA, so that was a big plus for me to, read about some of the areas that I know. He actually moved out 15 years ago somewhere, I don't know, New Mexico, I think it was. Something happened to his sister, and he decided to come back to figure out what happened, like what's going on here. He is a necromancer, means he can see the dead, he can interact with the dead, and that's very important for the whole series. So he comes back, his sister was murdered, and he is trying to figure out what is happening. The problem is that not everybody is happy that he's back, and there's a whole nasty mess that he has to try to get through and figure out, and what happened with his sister while, dealing with his past, while dealing with a couple of friends, and so on. Typical yet not so typical urban fantasy. So you have like these very typical elements in the sense of he is like very rugged, he has a rough past, he is kind of like a, rough around the edges type of guy. Something that is a little bit more atypical from urban fantasy experience that I have, which is not super deep, but I've read my fair share of urban fantasy in my life, is that this is Mexican Aztec inspired. I know that those are different things. I'm fully aware of that. But it has kind of both elements in it. First of all, because LA is very Mexican heavy since we're very close to the Mexican border. So there's a lot of elements in there. And then he deals with old Aztec gods. And it's awesome. Like, from a lore perspective, like the world building perspective, this is epic. I loved experiencing and learning all about it, about the different gods and whatnot that he's learning. I don't want to say too much because obviously I don't want to spoil things, but also how that kind of merges with his being able to see the dead people and kind of move between the world of where the ghosts lived and the real world. It's a great mashup, and it's fantastic. It's just a lot of fun to read about all of this and to see him develop. And I'm talking about over the 4 books. So not in the first book, he doesn't develop as much, but over the 4 books, he really goes through a journey, and it's really interesting to experience what he's going through and how his relationship with some of the side characters are changing. I was very positively surprised about this one, and just how really deep the characters are and how much fun it is to interact with them. That's it. Woohoo! I will see how long this video is after editing, but 85 years later, we're finally done with my April TBR. Well, I definitely have to say I missed you all, so I hope I see you all later. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, week, whenever you listen to that, and then bye.